there's a skewed image of their own perceived value.
Where the rubber hits the road. Right now. Recording in progress. We're on for the second episode of this about to become infamous podcast. With all kinds.
Very bad advice.
Very, very bad advice. The worst advice on the entire web space, aka internet.
I actually had a moment in the gym the other day. It was actually a day before yesterday. And one of the employees was talking to me, and we were talking about tattoos and how I told her, I was like, if you're ever just not sure if something looks good, just keep pushing until it's like too much and then it's going to look good. And she was like, oh, I'll have to try that, like joking around. And I was like, maybe not, because that's how I ended up in like therapy for 2 different boyfriends when I just decided to keep adding on. I had to walk back that advice. I can't in good conscience go around telling people that.
So
as bad as it is.
So I had like a similar context situation in the gym today, where it's this one training partner, or used to be training partner of one of my athletes, like this powerlifter chick I talk to or sometimes train with. And like I got a fresh tattoo, fairly large, on my hip and stomach. And I told her, yeah, first time back in the gym after this fresh tattoo and blah, blah. And she's like, aren't you scared they can like expand and stretch your skin? And aren't you scared to go train with a fresh tattoo and blah, blah, blah? Especially in that spot, because that's where not that much fat is. And I told her, so you think there's not that much fat right there? So you think I'm looking pretty lean right there? Yeah. Nice. So I told her, yeah, see, darling, men only hear what they want to hear.
I'm not sure that's just a man thing, because I definitely only heard that you were skinny in there too. So. I also heard her saying something about how you're obviously working out hard enough to stretch your skin significantly with the muscle you put on. So what I'm hearing is that you're lean and jacked.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's a risk you're going to be willing to take with those tattoos.
It could be worse for a coach, put it like that.
Yeah.
Not my best, not my worst. Certainly much skinnier than, I think the last time I was this skinny, I may have been like 23 or some shit. Not that I'm not still a spring chicken, but here we go. So the first topic on our agenda of today is a slight anxiety healthy for you to reach your goals, keeping you on the edge, keeping you accountable, or is it going to put you in all kinds of jeopardy?
I'm a team anxiety all the way. I think a lot of times has a really negative connotation, because like with like pushing the acceptance of mental health issues, a lot of people are like, oh, my anxiety, and they talk about it like it's a detriment. Sometimes sure it is, but like my anxiety is literally just your body's warning sign. It's like an alert system. And so for me, if I'm anxious about something, it usually means that I'm ignoring it. And I'm not saying that I actually do not have a low level of anxiety about things. If you talk to any of my friends, I'll get super anxious, but then I go into like a hyper planning mode, because that's how I combat it. And so I get anxious like sometimes about planning things. For like my job in the Army right now is switched to lots of intensive planning. And so I just sit there and think about it, and I get anxious about like people getting lost or miscommunicating or not having the stuff that they have. And so instead I just go into hyper planning mode. And it's the same with the gym. When I sit there and I get anxious about like what I'm going to do that day and how I'm going to get it done, then I end up just like researching or whatever until I've got a grasp of it. And then I walk in and it's like twice as easy as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And then my God complex is activated, because I was like, why was I worried? I can do anything. And the cycle begins again.
I think when we first came up with that topic to discuss, I mentioned something similar, where like if all the shit in your life is not keeping you up at night sometimes, a little bit and you're not suffering from like a little bit of pressure and anxiety, are you really pushing yourself hard enough? Like really, like if you're always like sleeping like a baby, unless you're like in that, you know, 5th percentile neuroticism and you just have zero fucks to give, which congratulations to you. I'm pretty fucking jealous of that shit. But, yeah. So
I have very few fucks to give, but I also stay up at night thinking about all the things that I could be doing better as well. And I did actually, I know when we first talked about this, I had actually had like a full-on anxiety attack in the middle of my bench set, which was completely unrelated to anything I was doing and just more about the anniversary of my halfway through chemotherapy mark, which was a fun little, like you would think that something like that would make you feel happy, but it actually just made me like super angry. And then the anxiety attack just kind of like spiraled from there. But I remember actually telling myself, well, if I stay here and finish this bench set, then like I'm probably going to be less anxious because my breathing for bench is going to level me out. And it didn't work, but you know, sometimes it has in the past.
I mean, this will segue really nice into our second topic on the agenda. Like, can lifting get you through the really hard parts of your life? Which obviously it can, but going off on a little bit of a tangent about that, where this will definitely like intersect, but I definitely feel like we should probably dedicate like a whole episode to what lifting through chemo meant, how we went about it, and how it helped you get through that shit, and especially like and maybe keep it a little bit more general.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about the different things that lifting has done to help me. The reality is, I mean, you know this because you coach me, but I'm a professional shitbagger, and I don't want to work hard at anything that I want to do.
Yes, sir.
I won't even write down like lists of what I'm eating because it's just
all the shit bags on deck.
and like, which is, it's kind of like it's more of a feature than a bug, I think, because I'm always trying to figure out like what's the
massive cope.
What's the easiest way to get from point A to point B that requires the least amount of effort on my part. But I will say that like having been through some significantly difficult times in my life, specifically going through chemotherapy and just being like a stranger in my own body, going to the gym during that time where I had no control over my health and no control over what was happening around me, and I couldn't really affect any change other than taking care of myself in small ways, really did actually help me get through that time. Because we have a saying in the Army that comes up a lot when you're going through a difficult period of training or you're in the field, and people tend to start thinking like very far in advance. And it actually ties back into that anxiety because people will start thinking, you know, a day or two in advance, and they're starting to get anxious because they're like, I can't do it this long. Like I can't endure another day of this or whatever. And so the saying that we use is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is basically saying focus on the next meal, get through the next block of hours. Mm-hmm. And I basically applied that across the board in my life. And when I was going through chemo, it was very much breakfast, lunch, and dinner, gym, because those were the things that I could control. And you know, too, because you coached me through it, breakfast, lunch, and dinner were no small feats during that time because I felt like shit. I could not eat and I was really sick. And so like our goals, because I wrote them down and I got reminded the other day on my Facebook memories, our January goals this time last year were for me to gain 2 pounds of any kind of weight and to be able to eat consistently like 2 meals a day. So being able to like go to the gym, have a structure that I didn't have to think about, that I didn't have to build myself. I just had to go and do what I was told and then go home and eat what I could. Absolutely pushed me through that period and gave me something to focus on that wasn't, oh my God, I'm in this horrible treatment and I'm going to be unhealthy for the rest of my life. And this isn't even the only time I'm doing this, and like spiraling completely out of control. But also a driving force behind that was the anxiety that if I didn't keep my body healthy, then everything else could be a lot worse for me. So the two things kind of walk side by side a lot.
I mean, in my personal biography, I can attest a million times as to how the gym has dug me out of more than one hole, like where they were physical or mental, where it'd be temporarily dropping out of school, or like rehabbing and going through the aftermath of severe bone disease in my hip and being on crutches for like half a year at a time. I would still drag my carcass to the gym twice a week at least and do what I can on crutches and plow on through. Where sometimes just these very small or seemingly small things where you still have control over it, one thing in your life, at least that one thing you still have a little bit of control over, when every other shitty fucking circumstance is completely out of control. This just that last a little bit of piece of ice to hold on to when you're out on that cold ocean and Leonardo DiCaprio already died right in front of your eyes. So
I know there was plenty of space, but I get it. I take up a lot of space too, but no, and that's the thing is like a lot of people.
Sorry, Leo.
Sorry, he survived.
I've been bulking.
Side note, have you heard the story of the guy that got so drunk that he would on the Titanic, he was able to swim through the night and not freeze to death because his blood alcohol content was so high that he couldn't freeze? Have you heard the story of that guy?
He must have been one of the guys that when they're already sinking, these guys come out in their evening finest and say,
I guess.
At least when we're dying, like serve us a brandy, at least when we're dying, we're going out in our finest. It's probably the same guy.
Mr. Guggenheim, these are for you, Mr. Guggenheim.
Well, thank you. We are dressed in our best and are prepared to go down as gentlemen. But we would like a brandy.
Yeah, according to the story, he was on the deck and he was helping people put others on lifeboats, and then he was like, well, I've done enough of this, and he went back to his room and he like got a little bit drunk, and then he went out and put more people on lifeboats, and he went back to his room and got a little bit more drunk, and then he did it like a couple more times, and the last time he came out of his room he was like, oh wow, the boat is like tipped on the side and all the lifeboats are gone. So he just like went back, finished getting as drunk as he could, and then he ended up like swimming for hours till he got to a lifeboat, like swam to a lifeboat and survived, which is like honestly a hero in my eyes, because like that's dedication to get that drunk. I don't know how much alcohol that is to stop you from freezing, but that's a lot. But anyway, that was a segue. But I know that it's really popular right now, or it's like a trend among young people to just like talk openly about their mental illness, but a lot of people use it as a excuse to not accomplish something, and they're like,
be a little bitch.
Yeah, I can't do that today, my anxiety is too high, or I can't do that today, I'm really depressed, I can't get out of bed today, or whatever. And
hot topic.
Yeah, but a lot of people, when like they're telling me like I'm just not feeling like myself, I have low energy, I'm really depressed, a lot of times the first couple things I ask them is like, how much are you eating? When was the last time you showered? And when was the last time you like actually exercised and got your heart rate up and like moved your body? Because just going for a walk or a run or sweating or whatever is gonna cycle the chemicals in your brain. It's like a little frontal lobe wash or something and it really does improve your whole outlook. Like I've gone into the gym before just absolutely beat down from work or whatever, and come out of the other end of the workout that I thought was going to be a terrible workout, having actually PR'd a couple times, and have like a completely different outlook on my life, just because the endorphins and all the serotonin and everything is flowing properly. So if you're not like, I just don't know why even somebody like me that doesn't want to work that hard at anything, well, I just don't know why you wouldn't go to the gym or pick up some form of exercise on a regular basis. Like, you don't even have to be good at it. You can just move around and sweat a little bit.
I've been in the exact same spot where I told people that looking at your lifestyle is absolutely no way that you can't be depressed. Like, with your lifestyle, guess what? You're setting yourself up. You're bound to be depressed. If your sleep schedule is completely fucked up, you're up playing computer games, don't shower 5 or 6 days a week, no job, no reason to get up, absolutely no form of physical exercise, horrible diet. Like, it's like, this is your body's regular physical reaction to that lifestyle. You're going to be depressed. Guess what? Like,
well, and the thing is too, like, so it's a lot of times it's out of your control. Like, I didn't ask to be a sad bitch. Like, I did not ask to have chemical imbalances passed on from my parents, and I did not ask to get diagnosed with cancer, and I didn't ask to be harassed and bullied by my peers or whatever. So all that stuff adds up, but I can't really do anything about that. But I'm definitely not gonna just like let them win.
yeah, how are you going to deal with it?
Yeah, and so it's like, again, it's about tiny bits of control. And people call me a control freak. Maybe it's true, but tiny bits of control, like moving your body, being able to take control of 1 hour of my day when everything else is messed up. And it's kind of funny because I've had people, like, I have friends that have had similarly hard times, and they're like, they look at the lifestyle I have and like the level of fitness that I'm at, and they think it's unattainable, when the reality is that it's very easily attainable. And it's literally like, it's an hour and a half of my day 3 times a week, which I've spent way more than that doing really stupid shit or just shopping on Amazon. So it's not an unattainable standard of excellence. It's just a matter of like, I prioritize it 3 days a week.
Like, you don't need to sacrifice large parts of the rest of your life to get to like an intermediate lifting stage. Let's be honest. Like,
right.
And
even, well, even once I'm ready to start moving forward, I'm not even going to have to make that many adjustments to what I'm doing now. Like, I might pick up another day or two, but it's still not going to be spending more than an hour and a half or an hour in the gym. So it's not like, you look at the scope of shit that you do in your life and how much time you waste just like sitting around. And I know that binging Netflix or whatever is relaxing, but if you just take like 1 hour off your binge and move around a little, you're all of a sudden way farther forward than you were.
I mean, there's probably something to be argued when it comes to coaching a little bit advanced athletes or people getting deeper into contest preparation phases, where at some points where you just have to increase volume, it becomes increasingly hard to just get done under 2 hours with certain workouts, where you just also will be requiring more rest as your absolute loads just get bigger and bigger. But not really talking about that when it comes to like general improvement of life quality, of course, where, I mean, there will be.
That's not even the average person either. Like, the average person is not training to be a fitness competitor. And even the fitness competitors, while they train in cycles. So they like cycle, or they should be, if your coach is smart, you're training through cycles. And so your intensity, rises and falls and lets you prioritize and reprioritize. Because unless it's like your full-time job to look good, I don't know many people that can consistently spend that much time, pursuing like the fitness careers.
This is something that really shocked me yesterday, where general population not in a place in their life where they have like an integrated schedule of some type of physical activity, being so incredibly deterred by people just having their shit together and just having intermediate lifting regimes to improve general quality of life. And it's already like a convenient excuse to then say, okay, all this shit doesn't apply to me because I'm sort of comfortable and lazy and don't really want to change all that much.
Yeah.
And that's just like it's a little bit sad that it's not a little bit easier to look at, okay, if people are quite a bit ahead of me, like at least I can be a little bit better than myself right now next week. Like this doesn't
Yeah.
take too much mental gymnastics in my personal opinion, but I guess.
Well, everybody wants to think they're special and that they have a special case or a special exception, you know, and it's fair enough if you want to think of yourself that way, but like also just understand that when you have that mindset, it's really just your ego getting in the way of you being a better version of yourself. And I know that like there are people that'll be like, oh, it's not that deep, it's just fitness, but it's really on one level it's not that deep. If you don't want to be healthy and fit or whatever, that's fine, go about your life, this isn't for you. But on the other hand, it is that deep. And to your point, there's like structures and routines to being able to get where you're going. And I think there's a lot of people out here that have never really learned how to build those routines and never really learned the discipline of staying consistent. And I say that because when I was younger, I was raised on a farm, and we had external chores that had to be done, right? So if I didn't wake up on time and I didn't get down to the barn and feed the animals, then we wouldn't have food later in the year. So there was discipline kind of built into the way I was raised, and that really helped me in adulthood. But there's that's a very small experience. Like there's a lot of people don't have that experience. And when I was younger and out of the house for the first time, I definitely slipped on my discipline often, especially after I graduated college and I got out of any kind of structured scenario. It got a lot harder for me to keep the discipline of my routines and my schedules. And so there were years where I was sandbagging in the gym pretty hard and kind of gaining weight, but not muscle, and just not really doing anything good. I mean, it was still fine that I was moving, but you know, I wasn't really achieving anything, and I definitely wasn't growing. And then getting a little older and having a few more experiences and getting the discipline brought back into my life through being in the military and having like actual definable goals again really fixed that part of me. But I think there's a lot of young people out there that don't even know how to begin building those structures. And so they are kind of paralyzed by the excuses that they have in their head, and then the kind of unknown, like, oh, I don't know how to structure my day, I don't know how to structure my workout routine, I don't know how to structure my diet, and so I'm overwhelmed, I'm not going to do it at all.
It's just sad that on this end of the spectrum, relatability goes out the window that fast, where then on that other extreme end of the scale, we have fitness professional influencers just showing our highlight reels on YouTube or Instagram, where then somewhere in the middle, where people should appreciate intermediate relatability, and also think, well, this and this and that guy does this and that, how the fuck could he know what he's talking about if he's not Larry Wheels or something?
Yeah.
You know, it's a shit show out here sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's so easy to lie on Instagram too. It's so easy to fake it and to lie, or to do like a bunch of photos one day after you've done a contest and you look your best and then post them through the year.
Or just leave out all the not so glorious parts.
Yeah, leave out the parts where you're just eating like dry chicken and rice and like crying into your, pillow at night because you're hungry and you want something that tastes good. And then of course there's this like weird side note too, like this weird idea that like you can have like, I don't know, have you seen that thing where it's like these very thin, like beautiful women, and they're just constantly eating or posting like complete junk food, and they're trying to
because the macros and calories are still controlled, or how they do it?
I don't know. Well, I'm sure that some people count macros, but I'm specifically talking about the one where they're like, oh, I eat all this junk all the time. I eat whatever I want. And they're trying to sell you on the fact that they're maintaining their physique that way. But you know they're not. And then there's been a few that have come out in the past and been like, yeah, when I took this like video or this Instagram photo, I literally took 2 bites of this and did nothing else. And so,
I don't know. I haven't seen this around yet, but you should definitely.
It might be like a female. It might be like a woman thing because I feel like algorithms kind of gear stuff towards you, and it does seem to be a pretty popular thing. Like beautiful, thin or fit women with like piles and piles of junk food, and then they're like, "Oh, this is what I eat," and like this is how I maintain. But the reality and stuff like that really breaks down the trust between like people that are trying, like you said, to market something relatable and just kind of push a more like approachable lifestyle versus the fitness influencers. And I think people see a lot of stuff on social media and they just question if it's even real because there's so much that's so easy to fake and we all know it.
Yeah, but I definitely saw some similar stuff for men for sure. Like it was dudes jacked up on all kinds of anabolic steroids, pretty obviously, and have these huge tables set up with nothing but junk.
Mm-hmm.
And like it didn't even seem like something that you would want to do because it was just so much food that you already know that if you just eat like a 16th of the amount of food on the table, you will be full and everything after would just be pure torture. But yeah, they definitely have the same thing going on Instagram for men.
Like The Rock's famous cheat day kind of thing. I mean, that's fun. Like
something like that, yeah.
Once a year, but yeah, there's people that always want to push that that's how they eat all the time, and it's just like it's not reality, and it's not. I don't know. It's just not it. But it makes it hard for people to know what's real or what's not.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously setting up all kinds of super weird expectations for people, as if all the social media stuff was not already leaving people without any context to place these things super confused at the end of the day. Like this is not making it any easier. Like to definitely I'm pretty sure plenty of people covered stuff like that.
I try to be pretty transparent about my process as well, and there are people that are still like very surprised by how simple I've made my process. But the reality is, like, I can stick to a cut for like a limited amount of time, somewhere between like let's say up to 6 weeks. But the reality is I'm not trying to have abs if it means I can't go out with my friends and like drink and have burgers and fries and live like an absolute raccoon when I want to. And it's just like people are always a little bit surprised that I'm not doing more. And there's definitely been a perception that I'm always in the gym and I'm always making healthy choices. The reality is,
trust me, I've seen her nutrition table. She does not.
At best, I make good choices 70% of the time, like at best. The rest of the time, I'm just kind of working. And I know I could actually, I'm probably making more work for myself by only being 70% efficient or 70% reliable. I probably would make it a lot farther if I just like disciplined myself to be like 90%. But at the same time, like, would that be as fun? I don't know. I'm not convinced.
Why not keep it at 80%? And just for the rest of the time, enjoy your life. I mean, over here, we're pretty big on just finding the next best thing, which allows your lifting and your nutrition habits to fit into a life that's still enjoyable and doesn't have to really like sacrifice any of the enjoyable parts whatsoever. Because guess what? Those 80% that are actually sort of dialed into habits that are conducive to your recovery, well-being, and fitness regimen may still be stuff that you just enjoy eating on a day-to-day basis. So they're just also at the end of the day enjoyable habits.
There's something to be said about the therapeutic qualities of a good cinnamon roll.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, like eating this will make me a better person tomorrow.
Well, and that's just it too. Like I'm maybe one of the hangriest people anybody could ever meet, and brunch is my religion. So honestly, it's for the best that I eat food that makes me happy every now and then. And by every now and then, I mean like a couple times a week.
I mean, the next thing on our topic agenda is the thing where we talk about eating more food and calories to build muscle up front first, to build a baseline and basic, get your basic caloric expenditure up if your long-term goal is to lose weight and lose body fat, and how those things actually go hand in hand if you structure it a little bit more long-term. And how many of people who are who have the conception that you should probably starve yourself as you're trying to either stay lean or lose body fat, and never actually get to the place where you actually have the amount of lean tissue on you that would be required to look how you actually want to look like, because that just requires a lot of time in sort of a surplus to allow yourself to build that tissue. Where we, over the course of the last year, after chemotherapy, have been able to implement that very well, where we just went to into a slight mini cut for your nutrition, and you just mentioned just not having to starve yourself even half as much as you used to when you didn't have all the lean mass we built beforehand in a slight caloric surplus, where we actually had you eat more beforehand, which then just made shedding fat all that much easier. And I've been in the same spot where most of like my nastiest bulking regimens for powerlifting contest preparations just led into me having the easiest time of my life, just losing 22 pounds like nothing really, like without really having to starve all that much after.
Yeah, well, all we really did for that cut too was swap out red meat for chicken breast, and we added like more vegetables, and we
sometimes it is that simple.
Like, and I was losing 2 pounds a week like clockwork, which was fun, except that I don't even like the taste of chicken, so that was not fun, but it still was like a temporary measure. The only time I believe people that are sitting there saying like, I ate all this food in a day, is if I can see their volume squat program, because when you switched up the volume on my squat progression, I was like, within a couple hours, the hungriest I'd ever been in my life. Consistent. And that's been going on now for like 3 weeks. I can't stop eating. And it's to the point now where like I don't even want to be hungry anymore. Because
those high volume barbell squat routines.
I bought all this food to be snowed in, and I was like, oh, I'm going to win the snow in. I'm going to eat all these healthy meals and cook all my meals because I'm not going to be able to get delivery. And now I'm sitting here like staring at my stove depressed because I'm so tired of cooking my meals. Because I feel like I need to eat like every 4 hours and then like 4 snacks in between. Like, and then I'm still hungry.
Like Sean is also a great example. Another client of mine was a referral from Colleen, who just maximized his novice progression and just really got the most out of anyone could get out of the first 3 months on like a regimented like barbell routine with a purpose. And he gained quite a bit of weight, and he was starving himself completely because he thought that's what he had to do to just maintain low levels of body fat.
Yeah, I actually remember before I even referred him to you, we were having a conversation, and he was like, I don't know why I'm not losing weight. I'm restricting my calories, blah, blah, blah. And I remember like, I get where this comes from, because like thanks to the 90s and like Twiggy and being like completely off your rocker on pills and the skinny thing, like it was very popular to have like 1,200 calorie diets or less. And so I know where it all got started. But now we've been working together so long, and I've been working out so long, it's like ludicrous to me that people still believe that less calories equals, losing weight. But there's like a floor to that, like you need the minimum, your basic metabolic calorie rate is what you need just to like function. And if you drop below that, then your body starts to freak out and hold on to stuff that it shouldn't be holding on to, which manifests as extra pounds and bloat. So
a popular personal trainer recently on social media went on about how like this does starvation mode as far as calories is not necessarily real, where I'm sure like with pure scientific facts and logic, of course, less calories still, you're not going to like cling on to that this much, but still your metabolism will be in a spot where you just don't really have anywhere to go. Like this is still like an argument to be made, even if it's pseudo scientific. Like if people just starve themselves too early, it's not a good spot to be in. Where, I mean, these two concrete examples mentioned right here, where
well, there's an entire eating disorder around starving yourself to be skinny. So
where have we heard that before? Yeah, at the end of the day, after his novice progression now, or after, I mean, he's sort of still in it, like approaching early intermediate, where Sean now has gained something like, at least if I would have to guess, it can't be less than 10 to 15 pounds of lean tissue. And guess what? Now he's like 15, 20 pounds heavier, has visibly less body fat on his back, visibly more definition. And the same thing happened to you, where now as you bounce back to 140 something pounds, like low 140s, your body fat is also visibly less than before the mini cut, where this is what you call a successful recomposition, where after a cut you increase the calories up a little bit, you get some nice carb loads going, a few good workouts, and boom, like you're surprised that oops, there's a much better body composition that we end up with now that we increase the calories back up again.
Yeah, ever since that little cut in December, January, I feel like I've stayed leaner, even though I'm now eating whatever I want again. But like, not only have I stayed leaner, my pump at the gym has been like just disgustingly good. Like every single workout consistently, I leave there and I just have like, I have definition through the day, but then after my workout and I have like my pump on still, just disrespectful how good it is.
Sickening, my lord. And my lady. After my brain fart, we're probably able to continue this discussion on calories and oh yeah, now I remember. So what I was going to address is like what you assume are girls or guys more affected by this like false assumption that you need to starve yourself to become lean, and cutting, like skipping the part where you actually build the muscle that you need to look like how you want to look like. It's, I guess it's very hard for girls, where obviously now that, like what we mentioned I think in last episode as well, is that girls overall, the overall fitness IQ of the population of the world increases. People realize that you need to eat a little bit more to actually have some muscle in your lower body to look a little bit more athletic, and it's okay for girls to eat a little bit more. But like the first assumption would be girls suffer from this a little bit more, where they still assume I have to starve myself, size 0, whatever. But I think nowadays the pressure is also very, very hard for young dudes.
Yeah, I was gonna
be
say
shredded, right?
Yeah, I think that I think that a while, not so long ago, I might have said, "Oh, women have it worse," because there is definitely pressure to be thin and whatever, or like very fit, depending on what circles you run. Fit and lean and petite and cute. And I would have said that women have it worse, but I've kind of reached the conclusion that everybody has it just as bad in different ways. Because yes, girls are often pressured to, eat less, stay thinner, whatever. And there's hundreds of millions of dollars into marketing campaigns trying to push any kind of diet, any kind of slimming pill, drink, dress, piece of clothing, you know, smoothing top, whatever it is, like there's billions of dollars in advertising in that. But at the same time, from the male perspective, like you said, there's pressure to always be like shredded and totally jacked and to look like a fitness model and to always have six-pack abs and to always have like, you know, bolder shoulders and massively defined pecs and like vascular bodies. And so like I think that the pressure is still there for men, just differently. And the reality is, for a lot of men, it's very difficult to put on that level of muscle and definition, especially if, you know, you're working a full-time job. But like the sheer amount of food that I have several of my brothers are very thin naturally. They have very fast metabolisms. My younger brother is like 6'2" and 140 pounds. So like just me, but a foot taller. He's rail thin, and the boy can eat and eat and eat and eat and not gain any muscle. Granted, he doesn't work out right now, but I've been bullying him into coming with me. But like, I think that it's hard for men in that front, because I used to pick up male fitness magazines because they had better workouts in them than the women's magazines. So like Men's Health and like the weightlifting ones. And you open that up, and what it's constantly pushing is like these chicken and rice diets constantly, or chicken and broccoli. Which you can't convince me that that's not its own eating disorder. If you've got a guy in the gym who compulsory like has to eat chicken and broccoli and rice for every meal, or he spirals into some kind of like freaked out, like very unhappy, angry mode. Like if his friends go someplace that doesn't have a healthy option. I've met that guy. I'm sure you've met that guy that like has to eat that meal. And then beside all those meals are all these bodies of men that have, like you said, either done a cycle or two of steroids, or their full-time job is working out or looking good, or are elite athletes with elite athlete bodies and trainers and nutritionists and people doing all the hard work for them. So I think that both genders have it really rough when it comes to these fitness standards and like what you're trying to achieve versus what's like feasible for the average American or average person.
I mean, I feel like for young guys getting into the fitness space, that it's probably next to impossible to have realistic expectations right from the get-go as you enter with zero context. And what you see will be skewed by anabolic steroids. It will be skewed by highlight reels, especially now more than ever. I mean, more information being out there is not going to necessarily make it any easier to sift through the bullshit all that fast if you don't have anyone holding your hand and helping you filter through it. Like, without a few years of seeing what's what, at least a few years, like I would imagine it's hard, if not next to impossible, without any context to foster realistic expectations.
The only thing you can really do is just like be the representation that you needed to see. But even then, to your point, all that stuff, highlight reels, everything, those are coming up first on your Google searches because they're very popular. And like every single person starts on the bodybuilding.com 5-day split, Monday through Friday. Like, because it's the very first thing when you Google like weightlifting, it's the very first link that comes up. And you don't even know to look beyond that at that point in your journey. Like I did that split for years, and thankfully it's not a bad one, but like it's also a split designed for somebody who is, you know, doing contest prep. Like if you read about it, it's a contest prep split, and you'll get results if it's the first thing that you ever do, but then a year, 2 years into it, you're going to stop getting results. You're going to plateau pretty hard, maybe sooner than that, depending on your body comp. And then you're going to get discouraged. And if you haven't like continued to research and drill down into this or whatever, then you probably aren't going to find the people you need to kind of be like, oh, this is the next thing you should try. So yeah, I think it's kind of crazy, but it's cool too at the same time. Like I can't even say I'm not guilty of having unrealistic expectations of myself all the time.
I mean, like my very first training split, which I got from a training partner at the time that was in the gym a few years already, was complete garbage and dog shit. Didn't really have any legs in there whatsoever. And the only reason after, like, what I would still have like decent upper body gains from this split, obviously, but for like 1 or 2 years, something like that. But the only reason I was fortunate enough to stumble upon something that would be much more appropriate for beginner or early intermediate lifters was because we didn't have that much information out there, because it was like around 2010 or something, where then we only had like one German language bodybuilding board on the internet, which then there was not really any YouTube fitness, or it was absolutely in its infancy at the time. So the only reason I was able to find sort of decent information where you could get form checks for free on this board on like a their own video portal, and the only reason was because there was not that much out there. There was not.
I remember because I started working out seriously in 2011 and 2012, and it was the same thing. It was very much like the only thing out there was like all of the Mr. Olympia workouts, right? Because like that was one genre. And then there were like some YouTube stars that worked out and would offer their advice. And then there was like bodybuilding.com, and then a couple spinoffs of like Photocracy, which I was very active on for a while, and a couple other like fun lifting sites. But again, like there was not really a ton of information out. And most of the information that was out was like dated from the 80s or not even really updated. And then there was like 90s and early 2000s diet culture in there. And so it was very chaotic. And even now, like 10 years later, I hadn't even heard of like RPE lifting until I was linked up with you. And then I was like, this makes so much freaking sense. But there's still so much to learn and so much we're discovering every single day, you know, and there's so much that we don't know. But what we do know is that like every body is a little bit different. And so there's not really a one size fits all lifting thing. And that a lot of these influencers, a lot of the stars, I don't want to take away from what they've accomplished, but it's not like they're not being honest about the years of work and the actual products that have gone into making them who they are today. There are some people that are doing like I think a really good job of being pretty transparent about what they're, you know, doing to get the physiques that they have. But there are so many more people that don't even have the ass that they're posting on Instagram. Like they're straight up editing it on. And I'll be really happy when the era of Instagram glute workouts is gone, because nothing hurts my heart more than seeing some girl at the gym, like new to the gym, because I go often, so I know new faces, and I see her do a 2.5 hour workout of like glute bridges and clamshells in different variations.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah, you see those a lot.
Once,
I've seen them today, actually.
Never once hit a compound movement consistently. And it's funny because I used to scroll Instagram and whatever and try to find the best like new glute exercises. I do them in the gym and I got nowhere. And when you cut all that shit out and you put me on like squatting twice a week and deadlifting once a week, all of a sudden I'm buying like the next size up in pants because my ass straight up does not fit in my size small leggings anymore.
I mean, keep in mind there's like at least one glute focused pump accessory in there as well.
Every day is like
I mean, a lot of the muscle building aspects, like after that base building aspect, will probably come from like Romanian deadlifts and split squat. But still at the end of the day, bread and butter, like.
Well, in the single leg, I used to avoid like single leg exercises just because they made me feel weak and stupid, and my ego didn't like it. And even just like the split squats and the single leg hip thrusts, like those, the after split squats and after single leg hip thrusts, the glute pump is real. Like that's when I need to start. If I was gonna have an OnlyFans, that's when I'd post my ass. Like,
exactly. I mean, now within like 2 minutes of the scope of this podcast, all the glute training secrets are out of the bag.
just keep it simple. That's what I tell people. Keep it so simple.
Could literally be that simple. Lift
It
heavy.
could. It's the same for men though. When I see them doing calf raises but not doing squats, I'm just like, what are you doing, man? Like you're missing your gainer. You're missing your mass gainer right there.
Lift heavy, do the important compounds, combine them with the effective accessories that are probably still compound lifts, and most importantly, eat a little bit more than starving yourself with like a
Rihanna
chicken
said
breast
if you
salad
want to have
every
an
other
ass,
day.
you gotta have a belly.
What
Rihanna
was
said
that?
that. Rihanna said if you want to have a fat ass, you gotta have a little bit of a belly. And you know what? It's pretty accurate. Like you can have both if you train over a long enough period of time, but like you gotta eat to get that ass.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just go through a phase with a little bit of a belly and then recom, like about the stuff we talked about earlier, like keep the
Well, a
long.
lot of people's definition of that little bit of a belly is literally just the normal healthy covering of lower stomach fat.
A long-term plan in mind is probably going to be much more productive, and the end result will be that much more satisfying for you when you look in the mirror as any type of fucking shortcut to like starving yourself and weird expectations from clamshells and duck walks and whatever the hell type of weird bandit latest Instagram workout you're just copying mindlessly.
It makes it easier to stay consistent too, knowing that every single week I'm going to hit, squats, dead squats, throw in some accessories. And then of course, like we're also benching because every day is a full body workout, but like it makes it easier to stay consistent because I'm not having to scramble for what I'm going to do that day. I'm not having to program every day. I'm not trying to like do too much. It's so simple that I have almost like memorized the routine of it. I just usually check the plan for like my sets and reps, but even then I have the general structure memorized of like, oh, this is week 1 of the 3-week block. It's going to be like, lower volume than week 3. So when it's easy like that to remember and memorize and know what to expect, for me, it's a lot easier to stay consistent about it too. And it's quicker to modify. Like last week, I had that calf strain that made it impossible to squat, but like it was possible to do other things. So it's super easy to modify on the fly rather than be like paralyzed by indecision and have to sit there and look up your whole new workout split,
So happy you bounced back from that so quick and not going to like fuck up all the work we put in the past few
weeks.
weeks.
A little sore, but I think as long as I just like take it a little easier on the cardio by the end of the week and beginning of next week, then I'll be able to go back and recoup the volume I lost that day.
So on the last few topics right here on my little agenda notes, tell me that we like something that we ranted off on a little bit longer yesterday. I say like high value men, high value women, the sexual marketplace developing maybe into your late 20s, early 30s, where, I mean, let's be honest, if you're like in your early 20s, you have no clue. It's very unlikely that you will be perceived as very high value if you're not blessed by the gods in multiple dimensions. Do women or men have it harder? And then we want to talk a little bit about how maybe even within the scope of that context, your ego and your delusions will be holding you back much, much more than maybe some honest assessments and hard, honest, stern look in the mirror.
Yeah, well, I might be a little delusional about my value too, but I will say that.
Why not? Why not just like
Why
keep
not?
a little bit delusional? Like at least cut yourself some slack once in a while.
I'm allowed to be a little bit delusional. I've been through it. I've got a medical reason for it. But no, I think that's the thing is like value being like anybody could be a high value person, right? Like the difference between a high value person and like a regular Joe is kind of like your dedication and commitment over time and your drive to succeed. So like those things aren't, assigned to a specific age category or population. I think that later in life, there's something that happens like at least happened to me between the ages of like 24 and 27, where I kind of got a little bit serious about who I was. Whereas before that, I was not. I was like a young, hot girl running around having fun, and everything was easy, and I wasn't really accomplishing much, but I, was making do, and it was fine. And then I got kind of serious about myself around 24. And I stayed serious about myself up till now, but I was really serious until I was like 26, 27. And I've objectively accomplished a lot that makes me objectively like high value in terms of like I have historical accomplishments. I am extremely intelligent. I'm extremely capable. I'm extremely competent. I have a wide variety of skills. I have several successful careers and all this other stuff. And I don't know what it's like to be a man, but I know that it's very difficult for me to date anybody. But especially it's very difficult for me to date men because I get a lot of feedback that I don't make them feel like men, or that they're intimidated, or they might not articulate it, but then all of a sudden they're in competition with me, even though like that's not my intent, and that's definitely not where my headspace is at. Like it's hard, I think, for men, especially younger men. It might be better when they're like in their later 30s than like late 20s, but I think it's hard for men to look at a woman succeeding in their realm, even because being in the infantry is male dominated, and like corporate America is still fairly male dominated, and the fitness arena is male dominated, and I do martial arts and that's male dominated. So it's like difficult, I think, for them to see a woman being successful in an area where the assumption is that they might struggle or they might not be as suited to it. And it's really hard not to compare yourself to somebody in that way. And I think that like men are kind of biologically hardwired to want to be providers and to want to be protectors, and they've been fed a whole lot of like, you have to be these things to be a man. So you have to make like more money, and you have to be the breadwinner, and you have to be alpha, which is like always fun to make fun of. And then they don't really know what to do with women who have accomplished enough in their lives to be comfortable on their own. And they don't really know how to interact with women who are basically saying like, I don't need anything from you. I don't really even want anything from you beyond companionship. And
But is that really the case? Is that really true that women then at the end of the day will want to, because like,
I can't speak for all women.
My doubts are increasing at this point in the conversation.
I can't speak for all women, but I can speak for myself and for women I know like me who have like successful careers and who have healthy bank accounts and good spending habits and are highly educated in that way. I can speak for my group of friends and myself when we're looking for partners. We are looking for people who, like we talked about, will either add to or at the very least not subtract from what we're already.
At least not interfere.
Yeah, it's like kind of a non-interference. Like we want somebody that's kind of like fun to be around, fun to hang out with, supportive, intelligent, whatever. But it's not necessarily a requirement that they contribute financially or anything because we've already got it. Of course, it would be nice. Now, I'm sure that there are women who are looking for that in a partner, And it's not even as simple as I'm not looking for somebody who can contribute financially. I'm looking for somebody who can contribute the same level and the same volume and the same consistency that I'm able to deliver. And I think, and this might be like a me problem, but I think that it's common across a lot of my close peers, where we're so driven and we're so successful and we push each other to be successful that it becomes very difficult for men who don't have that same mindset to approach. And unfortunately, like, I would love to believe that, you know, anybody's capable of that, but there are a lot of men that truly just are not, through like the accident of birth. And then the rest of the men are kind of in the middle of like great guys, but just kind of average or just not where they need to be yet, which leaves us about 1% of the entire global male population to choose from, who then have their pick of the entire population of women, because those top 1%ers, I don't think particularly care about how successful their women is overall.
They absolutely don't. Like, the fact of the matter is that they don't.
Yeah, so
like,
it's different.
from the perspective of these men, the definition is very simple, where they determine the value of a woman, whether she's young, has a preferably very low body count, and it's beautiful. That's how these 1% men, these, like, what is generally considered with this definition that's like around quite a bit when they talk about high value men being people that are within that 1 to 10% bracket of the population of in terms of income, 100%, 6 figures and upwards. It's usually these economic connotations. And I think in general, the problem is that men, whether they are average or high value, will not determine the value of a woman, whether she's a successful career woman.
Well,
It's
and let's not
not
pretend
necessarily
like,
something that men look for or determine the value of a woman from.
I
Where
can
then
tell you definitively that the average man thinks he's a 1%er as well. So like there's definitely a skewed image of their own perceived value.
where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, you've got like straight up Chads out here acting like they're, you know, the next 1%er billionaire, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, whatever, out here with his own podcast and his own microphone, going off about his own insecurities and trying to sell himself as a high value man. And you look at him and like he's only looking for, you know, 1%er women, whether 1% beauty or whatever. And it's just like his own sense of self-value has been skewed. And I can tell you that like the vast majority of women across the board are not interested in that person at all, which does not help any of the male population's chances with any woman at all.
This is where I argued yesterday that women do have it harder, because where the rubber hits the road, obviously factors are not just flat out economic. There's a lot more factors coming into this equation, where obviously some sort of like taking care of yourselves in terms of physicality, then also just plain flat out just high value behavior in terms of just high value behavior. Can you play dynamics out in a masculine way without coming off any type of turning off ways, so to speak? And then maybe obviously
being an asshole.
And for like the percentage of the population of men that can check out all these boxes is so incredibly slim, where then within the perception of young women or women in their late 20s, or probably looking out for more stable long-term prospects at some point, usually, then just the reality of the situation is that it's just an abysmally small percentage of the population of men that may be able to check all those boxes.
Well, and for the average woman now,
whereas pretty young chicks, like, if you got money, and
even then, it's like now the average woman has more access to resources for her own success than ever before. So even young girls who are like in their early 20s have almost unlimited options to make their own income. And so I know that a lot of, like in the past, a lot of the benefit to being with a partner would be to have that financial stability. And to an extent, like, of course, a dual income household is more stable, but it's not like women have other options now. And so I think across the board, women are looking for good partners. And I'm not sure that men have figured out how to be those partners just yet, because like we said, I'm like, if I'm looking for a partner, I'm not necessarily looking for the most successful, most attractive person. I'm looking for somebody who's going to be supportive of what I'm doing, or at least not interfere with what I'm doing. And that basically leaves like, are you good company, and do we get along, and can you like be emotionally intelligent? And like a lot of times I'll meet people or go on dates with people that are really, really nice or whatever, but they're just either like kind of negative, and they get to be a bit of a drag over time because their shit's not really handled, or they're not handling it in a very good way. And so then it becomes like, I have my structures, my routines in place. I have the things that I'm accomplishing, and I'm trying to make time and make space for them. And then the space that I'm making ends up being a drag on my mental resources and on my energy. And so then all of a sudden they're interfering in what I'm trying to accomplish. And so then it's like, what's the benefit of having them around? Because like, sex is not difficult to obtain for anybody in this day and age at any time. And so that's
it is much harder than you would think for a majority of men.
Well,
it
not
really
for women.
It's for women, obviously not so much, but
right.
Like if you have an Instagram account, you will have DMs. Like this seems to be how this works now. But for men, like even if you have shit tons of money, like this may give you like the first few seconds of attention, and then if you can, if you come up as a dork because you made all your money in crypto, you're still gonna be a dork. It's not gonna help you much.
Yeah.
And you don't check, like, okay, you check the money bracket, but physicality, high value behavior, sorry, you're still a dork. So
well, and it's not women's fault that men don't know how to interact with other women.
No, in this case, absolutely
it's like,
not.
It's sad. It's sad because they have unlimited resources too. So it comes down to the question I have is it a biological difference, or is it just like a learned laziness from the vast majority of the male population that they don't even spend the time to try to figure out? Because you can be better at interacting with people.
I mean, it also just goes back how with just the history of humanity, that historically and evolutionarily speaking, that not all men get to procreate. Like we have more female ancestors than male ancestors, and that's just the way it goes with status and dying in wars and some such. Where this is sort of a good segue into like where does it leave the rest of the population? At which point do people maybe have to like have that stern look in the mirror, be honest to themselves that maybe they're not checking all the high value boxes, maybe they got a little bit of a self-worth or self-value like issue, or at what point do you lower your standard before you're just fading off into oblivion, unhappy, and become a cat lady?
That's for sure. There's a lot more to life than procreation. And I think if they start there, I don't know what it's like to live as a man. I spend a lot of time around men, but I can't even begin to understand the male experience. But I will say that like, I feel like I was sold like a shitty bill of goods. Not that I'd change it, because I do love all my accomplishments, but like when I was about 24, I listened to a bunch of Jordan Peterson and Jocko podcasts and some of the Joe Rogan podcasts about like how to be more successful, because I wasn't really happy with where I was in life. And a lot of them were about taking personal responsibility and becoming more disciplined and all that. And so I like looked myself in the eye, and I did actually ask myself, the questions, what could I be doing better right now? What am I messing up that I know I'm messing up? And I had that honest conversation with myself. And then I started improving those things one by one. And I think that it seems like a simple answer, but that is the answer, is you have to regularly ask yourself, what am I messing up right now that I could be doing better? And again, maybe it's because I have a little bit of anxiety that always pushes me to be like, what could go wrong? What am I messing up?
Which we already determined is a good thing.
It's a good thing. But yeah, so it becomes like, and I don't think that it's specific to men that should be asking themselves, because I won't even pretend like I don't have very close female friends who are doing things poorly that they could be doing better, and they'd be a lot happier if they were. And so I think that if the focus came off of being able to procreate, or like how much pussy you can get, or how many bitches you can get with your cryptocurrency car in the DMs of people's, Instagram, I think that if the focus for the majority of men became, how do I become a better person in general, and how do I become a better friend, and how do I become like the best version that I could be, then I think that a lot of those men would see their prospects increase exponentially. Because I really don't think that, sure, there are some things that you can't control about the way you're born and who you're born to and where you're born, but I also believe in the unlimited potential of every individual, regardless of those circumstances. But I think that to reach that potential, you have to sit there and remove the external pressure of like what you're supposed to do, and look at yourself as, what am I doing now, and what could I be doing better? And it's interesting to see the people who have done that and then what they've gone on to accomplish, but it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't even happen in like a month. Like, I would say that since I started asking myself those questions, I was 24, I'm 28 now. It's been 4 years. 3 of those years incredibly difficult and like straight up textbook traumatic for a lot of reasons. But now I'm finally at the point where that foundation of stuff that I kind of rebuilt and relayed is starting to pay off, in terms of I'm starting to see a lot more opportunities come available to me, in terms of employment, in terms of things that I want to do, things that I'm interested in doing. I have, more hobbies than I've ever had. I have a general, like, more secure, squared away baseline of existence, which has actually made me a lot happier as a person. And it's also given me a lot of peace with the fact that I might not have a life partner. And I'm actually okay with that, because I still have really meaningful connections with the rest of the world, and I'm not bitter about it, and I'm not angry or begrudging people who have what I don't have. Instead, I'm just able to kind of be happy for them, and also be happy with what I have, and be open to the possibility of, one day getting those things, one day having a good partner. But I'm also not compromising on what I know I need to maintain this baseline of like satisfaction and general happiness in my life.
I mean, I think something that you mentioned is that it's definitely easier for men, where if you are serious and you're really like unhappy with your situation, that has that little bit of anxiety motivator kicking in to actually want to make something happen and better yourself, and maybe like also within the scope of enhancing your possibilities and chances on the sexual marketplace, then there are a lot more chances for men along the way to consolidate, get your shit together a little bit, and really work on yourself if you're serious about it and you have that desire. Where frankly, most of the men that I mentioned earlier that do not have sexual access, probably they don't care as much as they would need to get their ass off the couch and going. Obviously, like,
Well,
if you're serious about it, you're going to find a way.
Yeah, and I can't really minimize it. It's hard work. Like, and the thing is, women are out there across the board telling men what they want, and across the board, they're saying we want decent human beings. Now there's going to be differences based on like populations and what you're exposed to, but if you're looking for like the or I won't even say the vast majority, but the average woman out there, one of the primary things, if you ask her what she's looking for, is a good person or a good partner. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that feeds into that. And it's
a huge problem with that, sorry to cut you off, is that there's like a gigantic, enormous, ridiculous dichotomy between what women say they want and what they actually respond to. But
if you're an asshole but you're a good person, it's going to work for you. I know that it's confusing, but it's like
you still get dumped if you're broke. Like, to be honest with you, it's just a fact of life.
Well,
Europe, the United States, and the Western world.
Like, that's the other thing, is it's hard work to take care of yourself. You can't really minimize that. So even if you do decide you're going to improve yourself, it's still a lot of hard work. And especially for men, because like women can improve their appearance pretty easily. You know, we have a lot of resources at our disposal. You don't even necessarily have to like change your body that much anymore, especially with a lot of the body positivity, body acceptance movements. But like men, to improve yourself, you know, you have to really figure out what's going on in terms of like last time I picked up a men's health magazine, there wasn't a whole thing on skincare. So like, let's say you're just an average 25-year-old kind of pimply, a little bit greasy guy. There's already that huge amount of work that you have to do to learn how to take care of yourself properly, which you wouldn't think would be a big deal, but I think there's a big gap. It's like a generational thing. There's a big gap in people learning how to do these basic tasks, like how to care for yourself on a basic level, how to get up out of your bed and put on clothing that fits you and looks decent.
Oh, and that's like, a hard one. That used to be a hard one for me.
And then present yourself very professionally to the world. And I always go to that because I studied fashion design, so I'm very attuned to like appearance and how the psychology of the way you dress and the way you present and the colors that you wear and everything can play into whatever you're trying to inspire in another person or in another interaction. But across the board with my male friends, I see that they don't even have the basic understanding of style and getting dressed that women seem to get through like our collective knowledge. Because like, I don't know if men don't talk about it, but I know that like
they don't.
Well, most women, that's like a huge point of conversation, which makes people laugh at us for it. But like, I almost never go shopping without sending at least one group text of me like trying on something new or whatever and asking, hey, does this work? Does this look good? What do we think? And getting like pretty honest feedback, which I think develops a better baseline for women across the board of like, this is what works on my body, this is what looks good, and this is what's in style. Whereas like men will just go buy the same cargo shorts and polo that their mom bought them when they were in high school and wear that forever and wonder why women don't approach them. And it's like, well, you look like a Boy Scout.
Women are still, even if you're dressed nice, women are not necessarily going to be taking the first step, especially if they're women that are used to a lot of attention. But I guess it's definitely like dressing well is definitely an exception to that thing I was mentioning, where what women say they want and then what they actually respond to. Like when it comes to dressing well, like taking the advice of women is sort of a smart move sometimes, or most of the times maybe even.
Well, this is one way to like better yourself. It's like, okay, if I'm not getting the reaction I want out of women, you could start with, am I a good person? I highly recommend it. Like, am I a good person? Am I a good friend? Am I a reliable and competent person? But if you can't quite face that part of your delusion yet, maybe start with, do I look like a bag of ass? Like,
I mean, this will like, this is what's required to check that high value behavior box. Like, it should go without saying that you should strive to be an excellent human being, in that like you should strive to be a good person. You should not assume that you're already a good person with how you are. This is the point, like this is where men have been lied to, that you're just okay the way you are, because you're not. And where
Yeah.
women have been lied to is unfortunately this fantasy that all of them are going to get those guys within that 1 to 10% bracket of the population with high income and physicality and high value behavior all in check, which then just leaves those, like you said, some of the men that are within that 1% bracket with all the options of access within the sexual marketplace, and a lot of men disenfranchised. And but at the ass, and then as women get ever so slightly older, also leaves most of them disenfranchised and delusional, with the ego still in the way, because they probably will need quite a bit of time adjusting according to their delusions and getting that reality check. And then this is the problem, where men still have years to consolidate as their value may continue to grow if they're serious about bettering themselves, where women just have nowhere to go from there, unfortunately, except lowering their standards a little
Yeah.
bit, which
Unless,
is like,
unless we change like the perception and everything around it. But I think one of the best things, definitely the best thing I ever did for myself and confronting my own like ego and delusions, and also just getting a little bit more comfortable with what's reality, is by getting off dating apps, like getting rid of them all. And it seems like kind of an unrelated thing, but the reality is that dating apps are not set up for you to meet quality partners and have quality relationships. They're there to sell you on the app and to just make matches, and then to the point where like apps create bots to drive up engagement on the app. So sometimes the person that you're talking to is not even a real person. And if you look at the data, that like top percentage of attractive men are getting all of the likes, and then the vast majority of men are getting none or extremely minimal. And then women are like inundated with hundreds of likes, even at the most average level. And so it becomes this, I think it's a really like bad headspace to be in, and it's a really toxic marketplace. And I've gotten sideways of a lot of potential like dates or whatever on this, because I'm not interested in being shopped like a grocery list when somebody's interacting with me. And that's the mindset and the behaviors that these dating apps are driving. And it also becomes, they get this idea too that like then it doesn't matter what you do to another person or what effort you put in, because your next date is just a swipe away. And what I've noticed is with a lot of my friends that are still on the apps, they're actually like completely exhausted by them. So they're like getting matches. I looked at my friend's Hinge the other day. She has 89 matches and messages. She's replied to none of them. So she's like got the app, but it's so exhausting and so much work to continue having what's your favorite color conversations over and over, that she stopped having the conversations entirely. And I know that that's not just like a women's problem, that's a men's problem too. So if you want to solve, like if you want to bridge the gap between reality and expectation and high value people and how to make high value connections and meaningful connections, get the fuck off the dating apps. Like ruin that whole market. Like cancel dating apps, make dating apps dead in the water. They're gross. They're just not healthy for anybody.
I mean, most of the population will probably be very well advised taking that advice, where it's probably not going to do you any good, but skew your perception.
Yeah, people have forgotten how to speak to each other completely. Like they have no idea how to make a new friend in person. Like if you don't have somebody's number, they just don't exist to you right now. And it's kind of crazy, because you need the context of somebody's life to really have any understanding of who they are as a person and what they've accomplished and like how cool they actually are. And the dating apps remove that until you're several, months or whatever into it. Whereas if you were just approaching people in person, you'd have that context pretty rapidly, because most people are out with their friends or out doing things that they're interested in.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've reached like a point in time where it's a very good place to stop. Get off the dating apps and tune in for our next episode. if you're so inclined. And you like, well, just where can people find you on social media?
At Colleen OFC
All
on
right.
all platforms.
You can find some of my socials in the description box. If you made it to the end within the scope of these massive rants right here, then nothing but respect and appreciation to you, dear listener. Goodbye. Bye.